Well, hello, and I want to welcome everyone to our Zoom Talk interview and author series. And our guest today, our special guest today is Miss Nancy Flinchbaugh, the author of Awakening, a Contemplative Primer on Learning to Sit. So welcome, Nancy. How are you today?
I'm doing really good. How are you, Linda?
Great. It's the title of your book is so interesting. And I'm going to start off with a question to you if you're ready.
I'm ready.
So what was the inspiration behind your writing, The Awakening?
Well, inspiration means to breathe in spirited. And it's about, for me, it's about being inspirited with the Spirit of God. And so every morning I meditate for 20 minutes, and that's a time that I just sit in the presence of God. And during that time, I've really come to treasure that time because it opens my mind and awakens me to so many things. And so that meditation time, first I started writing poems, and then I wanted to become a contemplative evangelist to teach other people about the value of meditation. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends invited me to her church to teach for a weekend, and I wrote a little booklet about different contemplative practices. And that is where the book came from. It's kind of an expansion of that booklet that I wrote for a retreat.
It's interesting that we're talking today because I started for the first time in my life meditating on January 1 of 2020.
Wow.
So I can very connect to what you're saying about just sitting and being quiet and getting to a different level of your consciousness. So thank you so much for sharing that. So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? For example, what type of research did you do? Did you find there was a particular time of day for writing? Because we know that writing can be one of the most difficult processes ever. So tell us a little bit about your writing process for writing this book.
I write every day, the first thing in the morning. And I have a ritual that I go through, which has changed over time. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, The Artist's Way.
No, I have not.
It's a book for recovering creatives. Quite a few years ago now, probably 25 years ago, I went on a retreat with some of my friends, and they told me I was a writer, which was actually a surprise to me. But I thought, okay, well, I will try it. And so I started this book called The Artist's Way, which encourages you just to journal 3 pages or 4 pages stream of consciousness every morning. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of how I started writing. But then I also started that to be a prayer time. And so when I started meditating, now I always meditate for 20 minutes, then I journal, and then I write. And that was what led to all the books I've written, actually, and especially this particular one. I was so mesmerized with meditation that I started writing poems to try to describe it.
Wonderful.
And the one, Learning to Sit, is a part of the name of this book. I am learning to sit, and that was the poem. I was trying to explain what an amazing experience meditation is.
Do you happen to have that poem with you to just give us an excerpt of that poem for our listeners today?
Sure. That if you get my book, Awakening, a Contemplative Primer on Learning to Sit, you'll find that in the first chapter on meditation, and that's how I introduced the first chapter. It says, I am learning to sit. Some days it's hard. Some days it's easy. I am learning to listen for God. Some days I hear nothing. Some days the love washes over me into joy. Mm-hmm. And it goes on. I read this actually when I was in a class on eco-spirituality.
Oh, okay.
I was learning about the creation story, the new creation stories, and our teacher challenged us to do some kind of art. I thought, well, all right. And one of the things I learned in that was that the Hubble scientists posed the Hubble telescope on what they thought was emptiness in the sky, and they found almost infinite galaxies. And so I kind of liken that in this poem. I keep thinking about the courage of the Hubble scientists, some days posed on emptiness in the sky, some days to realize the darkness contained infinite galaxies. I keep thinking if I have the courage to sit in silence, some days I will focus on that emptiness too. some days I will realize the web of stars and relationships hold us all. And it's more a mystical perspective on life, but I really do believe in that silence is the Spirit of God, and it says hope and all of the possibilities of our lives.
Oh, yes. How interesting. Why write about meditation? Why meditation? And you've written several books, but why meditation?
Well, I took a class with the Shirley Institute for Spiritual Formation, and it was on leading contemplative small groups and retreats, but it was actually about teaching people to meditate and enter the silence. And because it's been so transformative for me, I want to share it with others. Now, some people say it's kind of an oxymoron. How do you teach people silence? But in our fast-paced society, people are just trying to increase their speed all the time. But wow, maybe just sitting and allowing yourself to be in the silence, especially during the pandemic. I think I just felt that it was so powerful in my own life that I wanted to share it with others to become a contemplative evangelist.
Well, we're so proud of you because you are a local. You do live here in Ohio, and you've actually written 3 other books, and I have a list of them. Letters from the Earth in 2018, Revelation at the Labyrinth in 2017, and Revelation in the Cave at 2012. So that's an impressive list of books that you've written. And I know that you talked to us a little bit about your friends telling you that you were a writer. But is there some point in your life prior to those discussions where you felt that your desire to write was emerging?
Well, I know ever since I was a little girl, I liked to write poems. I can remember a poem I wrote. At night after supper, when it's growing dark, I'd rather lie on a bed of leaves than go to the park.
Wow. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can also remember, like when I was in high school, I wrote a poem about a boy I liked, a guy I liked. And I wrote a series of poems, and then I gave them to him, and he asked me out, and that began part of a relationship. So I've known for a long time writing was very powerful.
So it seems as though it's just a passion of yours, and we know that our passion guides us. And again, I know you're a spiritual person, but the Bible even teaches us that God knew us from our birth, from our mother's womb. And so perhaps he had already decided, Jeremiah 29:11, that you were going to be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a couple of other questions here for you. We talked about the writing process. Can you tell us a little bit about the address of your website?
My website is spiritualseedlings.com. And I created that name when I was on a retreat. And it was in the fall, and the field was full of, I think they were actually thistles. Have you ever seen how a thistle kind of falls apart?
I've seen it, yes, and the thorns on the thistles. Yes, I've seen those.
But these little white things, looks a little bit like a dandelion, and they fall to the earth.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how they scatter seeds,
Yes.
And I thought, that's what I want to do with my writing, is to cast seeds, to plant seeds or to scatter seeds. And so I also kind of picked the sunflower as my theme. And so if you look at my website, you'll see sunflowers, spiritualseedlings.com.
Thank you. Also, you mentioned a reference to an HGBM. Can you explain to us what that means?
Okay, my last 2 books have been published by Higher Ground Books and Media, which is a local publisher here in Springfield, Ohio. And I've been really happy with their work with my books. This is my last book before the current one, Letters from the Earth. And she used one of my pictures of sunflowers on it.
Oh, that is beautiful.
I really love that. And then I think I showed you, but my current book, she also created this cover, which is the picture I took at Lake Hope of a water lily, which is a lotus, which is also a symbol for meditation. So you can see there's a little gold circle there.
Yeah.
My book was chosen as a finalist in the International Book Awards just recently.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to end our session today by reading a couple of the narratives that came out of your book from those that have read the book. And this is from Tilden Edwards, the author of Embracing the Call to Spiritual Depth. And it says, a valuable, this is talking about awakening now, a valuable and lucid contribution to understanding many basic practices and understanding of Christian contemporary ground living. And the next notation is from Ken Witt, the author of Highway to Heaven. This book is wonderful, thoughtful, and unique introduction to the art of contemplation. I learned a lot of things and found it very easy reading. So as we end this session today, we want to thank you, Nancy, for following your passion to be an author. We want to thank you also for sharing that passion with others. And so those that have been with us today, we hope you've been inspired to go out and get Nancy's book. And so thank you again, Nancy, for being with us. This is Dr. Shirley Stallworth from Talk Live Interview with an Author.